If you had wondered if the whole Egypt thing was winding down, the answer is no. More specifically, the answer is this. Look at this. This is Tahrir Square, Liberation Square in Cairo today. This is not our file footage of protesters on the big protest days last week. This is how many people were out in the city's main protest area today. The Washington Post reporting that, quote, hundreds of thousands gathered in what witnesses estimated was the largest crowd in the downtown Tahrir Square since protests began 2 weeks ago. The BBC concurring, saying, quote, correspondents say it is the biggest demonstration since the protests began on the 25th of January. Even after sundown, thousands of people stayed in the square. They are not going home. This is as big as it has been. This weekend, the government met with protesters and political opposition groups. They offered some concessions. The Constitution would be amended so the opposition can run in elections. There'd be expanded freedom of the press. Prisoners of conscience, political prisoners, would be released. The 30-year-old state of emergency, which frankly calls into question the whole concept of the word emergency, that will finally be lifted sometime eventually. In other words, the government conceded just about everything they could except the biggest and loudest and most insistent and consistent demand of the protesters, that the president, Hosni Mubarak, step down. They conceded everything up to that. Would those concessions be enough to sap the energy from the protest movement? Would people, by and large, think they'd gotten enough from the government and stay home the next time the protesters hit the streets? No. Emphatically, no. The crowds in the street today, bigger than they have ever been. The concessions from the government not cooling the protest movement down. This thing is getting bigger, not smaller. The next major protest is scheduled for Friday. Friday protests, as you know, generally are larger than those on any other day of the week. Anything could happen. But right now, this appears to be snowballing. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel, tomorrow Cairo time, so in just a few hours, is interviewing the new vice president of Egypt, the new guy sort of in charge there, the man whose concessions have apparently failed to stop the protests. That interview between Richard and Omar Suleiman is tomorrow. We will then have Richard live here on this show to report back.